All right, y'all. We have David Wise. I don't know if you guys could tell from the music playing in the background, but he was lead composer on Donkey Kong Country and of various other Donkey Kong games. We're gonna get into as many as we can today. David, how we doing today?
I'm good, thank you, and thank you for inviting me and having me on your show.
Absolutely no problem, no problem. So, my first question I have to say is, give us just the basic intro of who David Wise is and what you've been able to do with your career so far.
Okay, so for the last few decades, I've been very fortunate enough to write music, as you say, fortunately for the Donkey Kong Country series, but also for Diddy Kong Racing, Star Fox Adventures, things I've helped out on ukulele, and I did the score for Sumo Digital Snake Pass, Tengami, for Nyam Nyam, and many more.
Wow. So quite the extensive career. How long have you been doing video games? When did you actually get started with video games, and how did
Oh,
that all
about
happen for you?
well, it happened about 30 years ago, so late 80s, really. And I was working in a music shop. Two chaps came in, one called Tim, one called Chris, and they had a company called Ultimate Play the Game, and they made video games. Not that I knew that at the time, but they asked for a demo. And that time I was working in the drum department. I decided I'd come down and work in the selling computers. And that's purely because Yamaha had come in with their Yamaha CX5 and said, look, this is the future. And nobody was really interested. So the manager said, look, if anyone wants to learn this, you can have an extra day off a week. So I was sold. So I took it home, learned how to use it. And a few weeks later, I was selling loads of them.
Awesome.
And that's when Tim and Chris came in, and I sold them some gear. And I don't think I sold them the computer. I sold them a Korg SQD1 instead, which is like a sequencer unit. And they took the equipment and they offered me a job at the same time. So I went with it.
Awesome. So, what year exactly was that? Do you remember?
No idea. Sorry.
It's been a while. So you've been doing music pretty much your whole life, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So, what was the first instrument you got started with?
The first instrument I learned to play was the piano,
Okay.
and that was because my brother was having piano lessons, and I wanted to learn, but I was going to have to wait 2 years until I was the same age as my brother.
Gotcha.
So I pretty much learned by ear, and so which is a good, it's a good incentive to get anybody to learn. And then after that, I decided I wanted to play trumpet. So I got a trumpet and went to play in a brass band. And then that wasn't rock and roll enough. So I decided I was going to play drums in a punk band,
Nice. Nice.
which you do when you're 15. And we played quite a few gigs, toured around a bit, and it was good fun. And after that, I took guitar for a little while, really just play chords and that kind of stuff. But my main instrument's always really been keyboards, especially for composing and that kind of stuff.
It makes it a little easier. You can actually you can turn it into a guitar, and the keyboard can be anything you want. You kind of just go at it.
But you can do, yeah, but I like guitar because I don't really know what I'm doing on it, so I write things differently.
Nice, nice. So, what was your first gig, video game wise?
That was for Rare because they come in and they said we need somebody who can write music. So that would have been my first gig, and I spent the first 3 weeks playing Mario Brothers, the first one, and I thought that's cool. Yeah, nice. I thought that was an old game when I first started. I didn't realize it hadn't come out that long
Yeah, it was pretty much brand new
ago.
when you guys started there.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's right. So yeah, that's the family in the background.
Okay. So, so your first gig was with Rare. What was the first Donkey Kong game you worked on?
That would have been Donkey Kong Country.
Country.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
So, how long did that take to score? Like, is it a long process or is it fairly quick?
How it was a long time in those days because just going back to the NES, everything was done using code and hex and typing in numbers. So on your keyboard, the low C would have a value of 81.
Oh, okay. So every note, every pitch, everything has a code for it.
Absolutely, and every length of duration had another hex value, and hex goes 0 to 9, and then A to F, and that's your 16
Oh wow.
numbers. And So I had to learn all of that, and I could just, in the end, especially on by the Donkey Kong Country series, I could hear something in my head and just type in the hex value and just code it straight from head to straight in, really, without playing much at all on the keyboard.
Gotcha. So it's basically like you went from musician to coder, and
Well, yeah, sort of semi. I don't know. Coding isn't quite the right word, but it's sort of, I don't know, macro language. It's sort of semi-coding, I suppose. But
gotcha.
yeah.
So, what is the most recent thing you've done?
The most recent thing I've done is something that I've done several things, but because of COVID, they've all been delayed.
Absolutely.
And for everything I do, I have to sign non-disclosure agreements, so I'm not really at liberty to.
So most recent without the NDA.
So I suppose I don't know. Probably maybe the last ukulele is the one that's actually hit the market just before COVID and came out. There might be. Oh, there was one for was a Norwegian company that I'd done a game for.
Okay.
And I'm terrible with names and stuff because the name I know something under is its code name, and by the time it comes out, it's called something else. But anyway, there was a chap in Norway who'd done something. Although, to be fair, I'd actually probably finished that music about 8 years prior to it coming out, or at least 5 years anyway.
Gotcha.
So there can be a long time from rewriting something and then people going away rewriting games and doing that kind of thing.
Absolutely. So let's see. I have to ask. I know it's a very difficult question, but what would you say was your favorite thing you did just in the 80s, and then we'll do 90s and we'll do 2000s. We won't go into the 2010s or anything, but what was your favorite thing you did in the 80s?
I suppose in the 80s was probably by my Juno 106 synth.
Okay.
Instead of going on holiday, which is a bit silly, but I decided I'd buy this Juno 106 synth and pretty much sold everything to get it and learned how to use that.
That's awesome.
And then after that, I decided to get a DX21, which is like a cut down DX7.
Gotcha. So these are just for the audience. Those are different types of keyboards and high end keyboards.
Correct? Yeah, they were keyboards in the 80s. So the Juno 106 is I think it would be digital at that point. So it's got digital oscillators, 6 voices, a filter. And whereas Yamaha, they were sort of taking the market by storm at that point because it was something a bit different, and it uses FM synthesis, but it was very procedural.
Gotcha.
And quite hard to program. But I suppose really programming FM was my first foray into synthesis, really.
Okay. Awesome. So what was your favorite thing you did in the 90s?
That was getting a wave station by Korg because it sounded really, really good. And then reverse engineering that so I could put the type of sounds that were in the wave station into Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2.
Excellent. So the technical side of stuff is very interesting to you. It sounds like.
Yeah, I'm a bit nerdy like that, really. You know,
we're all nerdy. We all got our stuff. We absolutely do.
But yeah, I mean, apart from that, the other thing I enjoy is sport, cycling, and skiing. So it's quite different from the technical nerdy stuff.
True. But hey, you have to have a balance, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's too much nerd at the moment. I need to do more cycling and skiing, but you know.
Hear that?
COVID hasn't helped with that either.
Yeah, not at all. So, what was your favorite thing you did in the 2000s?
I suppose we were busy at that point. Heads down into GameCube. That took a long time because things took so long to get something decent out. Because when you're working on a game, especially when you're working as part of a larger team, there's a lot of money invested into it, and sometimes people are quite indecisive about the best way forward, and that can slow things down. So I can remember working on what became Star Fox Adventures, which was Dinosaur Planet, and that took about 5 years from starting on it to getting the thing out.
That's incredible.
Indeed.
Incredible. So I have to ask. So you basically saw the birth of console gaming and was there in its infancy and saw just how much had the leaps and bounds, especially in music. You said you started with 16-bit, correct? Or did you start on the
Eight,
NES?
8-bit. I started on the NES.
Oh man. So
So
you
I worked on the NES for 5 years. Yeah, so 8-bit. And it's amazing as well because there's a lot of a resurgence for those kind of retro style games at the moment.
there really is.
And it's nice to go and revisit it, but I couldn't go back and do it in the same way that I used to because it really just requires 100% focus, and it sounds like a glorified doorbell once you've done something.
And it can
So
take you what 30 days, and then you come through and you're like, oh wow, that sounds like a doorbell. That's like that's incredible.
yeah, it's quite disheartening really when you spend so much time on something and it sounds like that really. And it's quirky and it's nice and it has its place, or it had its place 30 years ago or 25 years ago, but not anymore. If I'm going to put some time into something, I need it to sound decent. It's got to be pleasing to my ears.
Absolutely. So, what was the hardest thing? Like, so you went from starting with the GameCube. I know there was a lot of issues with going from the cartridge to the disc. Can you tell us how that affected your music, and like going from, say, like the cartridge to a disc? How much more information could you put into your music for that?
Well, even when we went on to disc, we were still on the GameCube. We were still using a lot of things need to sync with gameplay, so we were still using MIDI and sound banks, which compared to a lot of games, say that were on the PlayStation 2, they were streaming straight from disc, so that their music had the ability to sound much more polished. And I think of all the systems, the GameCube was the one that was most restrictive as far as music went. We had very little opportunity to mold the sound chip or mold the sounds as best we could, because everything was on a local scale rather than global. And what I mean, if you wanted to change the sound, say a piano sound, you couldn't just turn the volume up of the whole thing. You'd have to do it for each and every sample across the keyboard, which took a long time. So considering what it could do, it should have been a lot more flexible. And I found it quite frustrating as a composer musician. So when we moved on from that, by the time it was probably Xbox after that, but I can remember that being quite liberating. Not that I ever actually put anything out for the Microsoft series.
But you did get to dabble with it and saw that, like, what you could have done with it, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I did work on games, but not a lot of. And again, because of big budgets and stuff, not every game that you work on is going to come out to its fruition, because even once you produce the game, it's a big marketing budget that has to be implemented to actually sell the game.
Absolutely, absolutely. So
just the way it is.
Yep, it's true. It's very true. So I'll be remiss. I was a huge Donkey Kong Country fan.
Oh, like, thank you very much.
Massive. And this music in that game absolutely was stuck in my brain. When Keith said, you get to talk to David Wise, he sent me the IMDb. I was like, I know who this man is. I know who this man is. Like, a lot of people don't remember Xenophobe, and your fingerprints are all over that too. It's incredible to get to speak to you. And also, I have to say that we had a guy who literally begged Keith to get you as well.
Okay, that's cool.
I have to give him a quick shout out on here. Adam Riddle. If it wasn't for Adam Riddle, we wouldn't even be talking to you. He literally was just talking to Keith and said, Keith, if you don't get him in here, and then literally as soon as he said, Brandon, how would you like to interview David Wise? I was like, I had to. A huge Donkey Kong fan. You also worked on Super Smash as well.
I didn't work on it. They used my music.
They used your music, okay.
Yeah, so they did a remix of it and put it in there. But it's still nice. I mean, I can't say it's not nice when you're playing a game. I recognise that piece of music. Yeah, so it does sound quite a lot.
So you play your games too, right? You played your games.
I don't really play the games whilst I'm developing. Sadly, I wish I had more time. There's a whole list of games. I'm still waiting to play Spyro, which I bought a couple of years ago for the Switch, and still haven't unwrapped it. It's still, so
shucks.
I know. Still haven't plugged it in and played it yet.
Get to it. It's actually really good. The remake was actually magnificent.
Yeah, I've seen it online and stuff. So and my kids have got it and they've played it. So
awesome. So
not me.
as you said, there's a bunch of retro games being kind of they're making them in that style. But what's a game that you've seen? I don't know if you've gotten a chance to see the remakes of. Like, wasn't there like the Banjo Kazooie and stuff like that? Is there anything that you wanted to get into that's been redeveloped or like remastered that you haven't gotten to yet besides Spyro?
No, the thing is, I want to play a lot of Donkey games, because I get associated with doing cute things.
Yeah.
But it's which is great. I'm not complaining, but and again, I'd love to develop some darker games because it'd be a nice complete change. And again, it's I'm not trying to be disrespectful because I love what I do and I like writing the music I do. But sometimes it would just be nice to go to the dark side and do something a bit more atmospheric.
Got you. So the musician comes out more with that wanting to challenge yourself and do other things and
and so there's a few games I think I know what they are as for the exact names, but there's quite a few. My son's got an Xbox upstairs, so there's quite a few on that list that we need to play.
Absolutely. Man, I I had a bunch of questions and literally I asked a very vague question. You gave me excellent answers, so I appreciate that. Excellent answers. I have to also ask if you got a chance to work like what's a series that you have kind of gotten to see and you would like to maybe hop on the next one of.
I get asked that quite a few times, and it's quite an unfair question, really, because David wants to work on, and he's saying, well, yeah, I do, but then there's probably a million musicians out there. If you said, would you like to work on this, and they go, yeah. So,
well, from like your heart, I know that like everybody wants to work on everything, but like if they ended up remaking Donkey Kong Country for Xbox and remastering for like they did for Banjo, would you be interested?
Well, I wouldn't say no, but nobody's asked me, so
Gotcha.
So there is that.
Absolutely. So I will ask that beginning question. We didn't get it recorded, so I'll have to ask it again.
No, that's fine. You can ask away.
So what? Oh gosh, how did I ask it? I can't remember, but I know I asked you how. Let's try it there. So. How did you get your start, and where was your like? I know you got started with Rare, but like, how did that all come to fruition? Like, you said you were working at a shop.
So I mean, there's a whole thing there as well, which I'm asked several times, is because a lot of people say you were in the right place at the right time, which is true. But then anybody who's got a career was in the right place at the right time, and there's a reason why. Is because what you did before getting in the right place at the right time. You were always, whatever you're doing, whether it's graphics or art, you were always doing something to get to that point. So for me, I learned to play the piano when I was a kid, and when I was about 12, then I went to play trumpet, and then after that, I decided to play drums for a punk band. After that, I went to work in a music shop, and that's when I got to play with lots of synths, because there were lots of very expensive synths. Even then, they're even more expensive now for that same thing. So I got to play with Oberheims and Rolands and Korgs and that kind of stuff. And it was whilst I was there, which is when I got the Yamaha CX-5, and I learned how to use that. And I connected all these synths to the computer, and I'd hit play, and off it would go, and people would go, oh yeah, that's great. And unfortunately buy them, and that's how I got my break, because a guy called Tim and Chris Stamper came in. I gave them a demo, they brought the equipment and hired me at the same time. So that was how I got my break into video game music, or writing video game music. But it wasn't, it sounds very simple when you say it in a sentence like that. The other side of it is I spent ages learning how to actually use the CX-5, which is programming DX, synthesis chips, learning how to use MIDI, and there's a whole. It was at the beginning of that thing. So I was probably about 17 at that time. So I was learning a whole lot of stuff. But at the same time, I was living in a bedsit. I didn't have any money. I sort of, every last bit of money I either spent on beer going out or on learning how to use music stuff. So by the time I got that break to go into writing music for somebody, I'd spent pretty much every last minute of my waking hours getting to that point. And I think that's it's quite a relevant point to make, because whatever you're really into, whether it's music or whether it's graphics or storytelling or game design, whatever it is, or video editing, the chances are somebody who's really into that would just spend every moment learning everything they can because they're really keen. And then at that point, that's even when I got hired, that was just the beginning. You know, at that point, it was a long, long journey to get to where I am now, because I kind of learned on the job. And fortunately for a lot of people, there are colleges these days where you can go to, and people can you can enroll on good courses and you get really valid information, and that can give you a good jump. Although there's a lot more competition, so it's swings and roundabouts, but whatever you're doing, you're going to have to invest a lot of time into learning what you want to do as your trade or your career as you go through life.
Absolutely. You heard it here first, folks. David Wise, work hard.
Well, it's working wisely, isn't it? It's figuring out what you want to do, what you're really passionate about, investing everything you've got in it, because you can. When you're a kid, you don't have family, so you can invest everything into what you want to do, and then hopefully you'll be creating opportunities, and that's what it's about. It is creating opportunities, and of course meeting people is really important as well. I was having this conversation in London with Robin a couple of weeks ago, and it's really important to get out there and network. I know we've had to do it virtually online, so that's made it a lot harder, but now we're coming out of lockdown. I think it's really important that people do actually make the effort to, and if you're a musician and you want to work in games, you don't need to go and hang with other musicians. You need to go and hang with people who do graphics or game design. You know, make yourself useful to people and work with people at your level. So, you know, don't get in touch with the musicians. Get in touch with the people you want to, and develop those relationships. That's the important bit.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, David, this has been incredible. It's. I know you probably. I don't know if you get this a lot, but literally, like, you're part of my childhood, and like getting to meet you, absolutely insane, absolutely incredible. Is there anything else you'd like to say that to the audience?
I see. Well, I've years and years and years I worked with Kevin Bayliss, and Kevin and I, we've got this pet project where we work on. We've got like a digital comic, so Kevin's doing the graphics and I'm doing the music, and it's called Salamandos, and it's available. We've got this sort of little pet project called DK Creations Limited, and that stands for Dave and Kev Creations.
Awesome.
And so we're about to release number 3. They're supposed to come out every month, but because we're so busy doing other stuff, it's been about every 5 months so far. And we wrote the whole thing in lockdown, and we're just finishing it off and tidying it up and that kind of stuff. So it hopefully we'll do our best to get the rest of the story out over the next year. But that was the idea in lockdowns.
Absolutely.
Where it goes. So yes, that's what we're doing. So what it does, we're revisiting where we sort of started for things like Battletoads, I suppose Donkey Kong and Killer Instinct, and it's all of our influences, because we were really inspired by people like Steven Spielberg and films like E.T. and that kind of stuff, and they were the things that inspired our video games that we used to get excited about. But it was all 8-bit, so we couldn't really do what we really wanted to do. So it's nice to go back and say, well, 30 years ago, we'd have done it like this. So that's really the inspiration behind the comic. And ideally, it'd be nice to turn it into a game at some point, but we're not quite there yet.
Got you. So we'll make sure to get those links into the interview section on the website. And right down below, you guys will be able to click that and check it out, because it's David Wise, y'all. Like, it's David Wise. But honestly, I've got nothing else for you. If there's anything else, I would love to stay in touch with you. And
yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to pitch in again at some point. That'd be great.
That'd be great. So thank you so much for being here, and good luck in your ventures.
Thank you very much. Lovely to meet you.